All right, hi everybody. So I'm really excited about doing this review. I haven't done a review on couples therapy, but um, I think it's time. I've watched all the seasons from the very beginning, and this season I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. So this is actually the end of the fourth season. She came up with like 8 new episodes. I've watched them all already, and I'm just going to be going over some of the key themes that are being presented in this episode, or in this like last part of the season. Talk about some of the couples and what they're talking about, what they're working through. And I just want it to be a fun and insightful conversation. I'm also live, so I'm not editing this. Um, so this is just going to be what it is. It's just me kind of casually talking about what I'm seeing and just what I think, and maybe some tips that you can learn from couples therapy too. So I'll start off with I always recommend my couples watch couples therapy since it's come out. It's such a good tool. A lot of TV shows can be such a good tool to witness someone else doing something that you are trying to do in a setting with experts. So, the thing I do like about couples therapy is it is straight to the point. People are solution focused when they come on this show. They want to change. They um, believe she is an expert, and so they give her space to be that expert, and it's very contained, right? Couples therapy doesn't always look like this because sometimes couples don't have that respect for the therapist, or um, they know they're not being monitored, right? It's just the couples therapist and them, so they kind of just come in and take up all the space because they know that they can. Um, so it's a lot of different things that are just shifted with this particular show. Like they're on their best behaviors. They don't want to look like the couple that's doing too much or is acting a fool on TV, right? So they're on their best behaviors, which is allowing her to do her work a lot faster, I believe, too. So that's nice. I really like that about this show. It's like, oh, this is like the perfect picture of what couples therapy could look like if couples just came in and they were solution oriented and they trust their therapist to an extent of like she has this expertise, she has this skill set, and so we're going to kind of put the ball in her court to help guide us and take the direction. Um, it's beautiful when it looks this pretty. But enough of that. So I'm gonna go through each couple. So I'm just gonna be reading off some of the notes that I took. So we have 4 couples within the last few episodes that I'll be talking about. So we have Ron and Allison. They've been married for 18 years. Um, they frequently engage in arguments, and they have a 10-year-old daughter who's kind of caught in the middle of their arguments, which led them to want to come on the show. Rod tends to shut down and stonewall during conflicts, and Allison um, kind of is more bold and maybe even like more aggressive. She takes up more space, and she's more of the pursuer in the relationship when Rod kind of takes a step back. So we'll get to what is a pursuer and all that in a little bit. Then we have Boris and Jessica. So Boris and Jessica have been together for 8 years, and their key relationship issues have been career decisions and just cultural issues, right? So having immigrant parents and kind of being new to New York City and having ambitions, but also facing like career challenges and like still having a family. So they have um, what is kind of, I don't want to say typical, but they're trying to balance like not abnormal issues, but for some reason their issues are just so large. And then towards the end of it, I think they get to a root problem, which is that sometimes they just need to actually step out of their serious roles and live a little, because they're overwhelmed with how serious their lives are and their careers are and their roles have been. So we'll get to Boris and Jessica. I also thought that it was a great depiction of how therapists still go to couples therapy, especially, um, and have some of the same issues that everyone else has. Okay, and then we have Kyle and Mondo. So Kyle and Mondo have been together for 6 years, and some of their key relationship issues are due to, I believe it is Kyle who is deaf and has a hearing impairment, um, and just is really talks about his story, talks about how um, he had to grow up learning how to read people's lips and how difficult it was to grow up not really having his community around him and not having that support there. And they also talk about like having an open relationship and how that's kind of the present issue in the relationship of they're opening up their relationship, and Mondo does not want to open up the relationship. He is okay with monogamy, and Kyle wants the freedom of non-monogamy. And so that's kind of why they're coming in too. Very interesting couple. Then we have Nick and Catherine. So Nick and Catherine have been together for 14 years, which is, reading this off and like recognizing that number is so significant. It's so significant because 14 years is a long time. Is a long time to deal with some of the issues that they deal with, but it makes sense. So we're gonna get to it. So Nick and Catherine have been together for 14 years, and they came in after having a psychedelic retreat in Costa Rica. They did ashkawash. I'm butchering that. Some type of medicine that I think it's like a mushroom maybe or something, that lets them kind of sit with whatever deep-seated emotional traumas that they may have. And they talk about how on the retreat, Nick kind of had to go through a lot of pain to get some of these deep-seated emotions out, and the facilitators were really trying to pull things out of him that he had been suppressing. And Catherine tells a story about how that was really hard for her to witness and hear him, but not be able to be there for him, which is also another thing, okay, that we're going to get to. So I'll start with Nick and Catherine because Nick and Catherine have been together for 14 years. And these two are what we see as two avoidant people in a relationship. And avoidant people, so this is dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant, people who basically they have an attachment style that is avoidant, of a lot, right? Avoidant attachment can affect so many different things. But when we're talking about romantic relationships, they tend to avoid deep emotions. They tend to avoid co-regulation. They tend to avoid just feelings and what that brings up. And um, they fear deep emotional connection. They fear deep love. They feel like they don't deserve it. They feel like, they're going to be abandoned if they get it. They feel very uncomfortable with um, emotions, love, having someone there to support them at all times, right? They feel very uncomfortable with it. And so they avoid it. If it gets too close, they push it away, they reject it. And surprisingly, this couple has been together for 14 years. So they managed to create such a safe space between the two of them because they have been so avoidant, right? So it's a safe space for them because they can go at the slowest pace, which is I'm going to avoid and then I'm going to share a little, right? But if they're on the same level of avoidance, it feels safe, right? If someone is afraid to share, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to um, do deep emotional things. And you meet another person who is also afraid, uncomfortable. This is the same level, right? But then you get to a point where um, maybe someone wants to open up a little bit, right? This isn't too far gone from where this is. So this person can open up a little bit and it still feels safe. And then they can go back to baseline of kind of living life, going through the day-to-day things. It feels very safe. The issue becomes when someone has suppressed too much, and it's just stacked and stacked, right? Because I want to give a visual, right? So let's say we're talking about emotional things that happen to a lot of people, right? So everyone loses someone in life eventually. Everyone loses a job eventually, right? People lose jobs all the time, or someone, their partner loses a job. Um, they get into a car accident. They break an arm. They, um, what else could happen? Someone that they really love gets sick and they don't know what's going to happen next. Um, I'm trying to think of like examples of the dog dies. Um, the kid gets pneumonia, right? It could be so many different things that affect people emotionally that piles up over time that's not getting talked about because we like this baseline. Um, and so it's supposed to add up, but instead of it adding up and getting talked about and like we're meeting each other, at each level of talking about it and growing and creating that sense of security, it only gets suppressed, right? It only gets suppressed. So instead of it going from here, 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 or sorry, let me give you a different visual. Instead of it going here, 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 it goes here, 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 here. And this person may also have their own things going on, right? So maybe they're going up here, they want to share. Something else happened, they want to share. Something else happens, they want to share. Now there's a huge gap of I have all these things that I haven't even touched the surface on that I'm afraid to share. So now I am super afraid to share, right? Then you have this person up here saying, but this is happening in real time. In real time, I need you to show up for me and to comfort me and to tell me it's going to be okay and to hold me tight. And I'm not too far gone from you, but I need you up here with me. I need you to match me. And they simply can't take those steps. It causes a panic attack. It causes severe anxiety. It causes them to get very uncomfortable. It causes them to just freeze, right? They freeze in real time while this person is needing them and wanting them, right? So even if this person has a support system elsewhere, this person still wants their partner to show up and to care for them, right? And so that ends up becoming a huge issue over years, over 14 years, where they can maintain a family, they can maintain a connection of a status quo. They can do fun things together, but they're not talking about the deeper issues. Everything is surface level until it's not. And when you're working with everything at surface level until it's not, it it's crushing. It's so difficult to take that next step and to move out of avoidance. And so they have a lot of work to do. They have a lot of work to do, and they're gonna have to figure out how to do it in a safe space, how to regulate their nervous systems, how to be able to take breaks and how to be able to how to move through some of the layers deep of things that they have been avoiding. Um, so to avoidance, when they get together, it can last. It can last a long time, but it can also crash and burn because eventually, um, if they don't have the proper tools, if they don't have the proper support to help them walk through some of these things that they have been avoiding, it can crash and burn. And it doesn't have to, but it can. That's any relationship, but especially with the avoidance, because they end up having so much more to do than some other couples, um, that it could just make it really difficult. And avoidance is a very difficult behavior to step out of, because you go from not engaging to engaging. It's like you say you're going to go to the gym, but you don't go to the gym, but you keep gaining weight. And then eventually you say, I'm going to start going to the gym, but you go to the gym and now you're sore. Now you got to stretch every day, even though you're supposed to do that anyway. Now you got to eat right. Now you got to time and keep track of like you have so much work to do that you weren't doing before, and you physically feel the effects of not doing what you were needing to do before. Avoidant people physically feel how hard it is to talk about something. They immediately physically feel it, right? It is the thing that keeps them stuck, because they don't have the tolerance. They don't have the window of tolerance for it. It's very low, and it's they don't have the tolerance. They don't have the capacity. So the window of tolerance and the capacity is very small and low. And so they have to work on it. They have to build up more capacity. They have to build up more tolerance. They have to build skills to be able to have the hard conversations, to talk about the things from the past, and process those things, to understand themselves and what it is that they feel and what it is that they need, and how they can also meet the needs of their partner and how to compromise. Like, they have a lot to work on. But I really enjoyed their portion. Okay, so if you know anyone who is avoidant, know anyone who, or you yourself are avoidant, um, and you need like a free resource, there is, I think it's like the Relationship School or the Personal Development School on YouTube. She's really good, and she talks about avoidance. She's having an avoidant attachment style. Um, and so she talks about it. I'll try to like link it somewhere, but she talks a lot about avoidance in relationships and dating and just in general. Like her whole page is pretty much that. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Rod and Allison, because Rod and Allison, I think, are the more typical anxious attachment, avoidant attachment. I don't know that for sure, but that's just how they present. So Rod is more reserved. He shuts down in conflict. He doesn't say much. He's kind of one of those guys where you're hoping he says something else, but he just doesn't. Like, the conversation may be short-lived, or he just shows up. Maybe he's present, but he's not engaging in the way that you would like him to engage, especially in conflict. Whereas Allison, she's this big personality. She's louder. She takes up more space in the room, in the conversation. She gets angry very quickly, and she tries to pull things out of Rod because he doesn't do it himself. So, and when he doesn't do it, or she gets tired of trying to pull things out of him, she gets very frustrated and angry and like kind of just goes off on him. And it makes her anxious, right? It makes her anxious and upset that he does not meet her halfway, and that she has to do this emotional labor to try to get him to engage with her, or to even even if he had the skills to slow her down or to say what he needed her to do in the moment, and redirect her, that would also be him putting in some emotional labor and meeting her halfway. So that way she doesn't have to be the one to pinpoint the issue, talk about the issue, um, and then over time get very upset and tired of playing that role. So they have this dynamic where she is the pursuer and he is the person that withdraws, right? So if someone is pursuing you, they're getting close, they're chasing you, right? They want to hear from you. They're trying to dig and have a conversation with you, and you just keep backing up. This is pursuing and withdrawal, right? She's just coming and he's just backing until he can't back no more, and or until she gets tired. That is a very unhealthy dynamic. And the only way to interrupt that dynamic is someone has to engage, which that ends up being the case with them. He ends up defending himself. He ends up kind of um, coming back at her, but it's not healthy. It's not constructive or productive. Um, so he does that, but they don't really get anywhere. So then they kind of just, it's a fight. There's no resolution. But in order to actually stop it in a healthy way, he could show up. He could show up, he can engage in the conversation, he can speak his mind, or he can say something before it even becomes an issue, right? She's basically wanting him to be more authentic, be more present, show up in times where they need more connection, or um yeah, or talk about the things that maybe she's too afraid to bring up or doesn't feel like bringing up. So he could do that. She could be mindful of her tone, right? He talks a lot about how he doesn't want to engage with her when she is being mean and aggressive. And so she could be mindful of her tone. She could be mindful of being controlling and trying to get him to do what she needs him to do and just let him figure it out on his own. Um, if he actually does that. So he has to figure it out on his own, come to her, do the things that she needs him to do, and that he also needs to do for himself. Um, but she has to kind of tone it all the way down to be able to make it a safer environment for him to come and to be vulnerable and to be expressive and emotive. Um, so she just has to dial it back and she has to focus on what she needs, give it to herself, compromise if she needs to compromise. But the anxious person in the relationship, their work is usually to stop. Their work is usually to stop and to pause and to self soothe and to wait, right? That's kind of the step by step when people are heightened and reactive and trying to pursue their partner. And if they want to change it, they have to first stop and they have to self soothe. They have to wait for their partner to figure out whatever they need to figure out, and they have to self regulate. But they can only do that for so long. So the thing about those steps is that a secure person has to also do that. But they can't do a relationship alone. So if this person is self-regulating, pausing, giving space, giving time, watching their tone, being mindful, the person then has to actually engage, say what needs to be said, try to compromise, do something differently too, right? So the only way to make a relationship work is if both people are working at it. It's pretty much the end thing that has to be said. Um you can't make a relationship work if only one person is making the changes and breaking the cycle. The other person has to also make changes and break the cycle. So I'll go back to the avoidant couple. Naturally, because of what life throws at people, someone is going to want to like naturally want some type of co-regulation or some type of support, um, some type of love. That's very human of them. Attachment style aside, that's very human of them. Everyone wants some type of um, love and support and kindness, especially when they're going through something. So naturally, they're going to want that. So they're changing naturally in the moment because things are happening. So for the other avoidant, their job would be to actually engage, um, to meet them, hug them, hold them tight, kind of what I've talked about before. And so it all connects. It all connects because you can't do relationship alone. You just can't. And that's what I love about couples therapy and watching the show is everyone has a role. And to think about how couples come into couples therapy, like traditionally not TV show, but traditional couples therapy, someone usually comes in and they thinks that they don't have a lot of work to do or they have no work at all to do. And it's typically the wife. I'll be honest with you. It's typically the wife. Sometimes it's the husband who like flat out husband or the boyfriend who flat out is like, I'm just here because she wants me here. Um, and that's an interesting transition. Um, but typically it is the wife who comes in and because she has been trying, because she has been investing, because she has been saying all these things and doing all these things already, she feels like she doesn't have to come in and make any changes. But she does because she, if she had the answer, she wouldn't be here. And so women actually have the hardest time adjusting to couples therapy, um, more so than men, because women, they really struggle with the fact that this is like starting over. Like you have to actually start a new pattern, a new way of engaging while he is now committing. Like you're committing to a new process, you're committing to a new pattern as of today. And that as of today really throws them, really upsets them. They go through this like grieving process. They usually take it out on the therapist or they stop coming to therapy. Like there's so many different things that they can do because it's upsetting, rightfully so, to put in all this work and then you're like, okay, let's start here. Like we have to start new right now. And we have to pay attention to what happens moving forward. Like all the things in the past, if we don't want to stay stuck there, we have to release it and let it go. Be mindful of it, but we have to move on from it. And they really struggle with that in the very beginning. It's shocking to the system. Um, and so yeah, women do struggle in couples therapy, a lot more than they anticipate. Um, and I like to put that out there because I think people just don't know. And when they get there, is not what they expect. Um, so I think that's all for today. I talked about two of the couples and their dynamic. So I really talked about anxious avoidant briefly, and I talked about avoidant avoidance and what it looks like when they actually need to move out of that and how they try to move out of that. So yeah, I'm gonna keep reviewing couples therapy these last few episodes from season 4, And I will come back and I will talk about Boris and Jessica, and then I'll talk about Kyle and Mondo. All right, thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the next video.